And welcome to another episode of Stuck in My Mind podcast. I am your host, WIZE. My guest today is someone who doesn't just talk about change. She helps people change culture itself. As the creator of the Culture Catalyst System, a framework designed to help leaders create real, lasting transformation through relationships, energy, and shared vision. She's also the co-founder and CEO of the Culture Catalyst Network, a global community built to help leaders step into their next level and create meaningful impact. Her work blends science, personal transformation, and leadership to help people move from who they've been into who they're becoming. Please welcome to the show, Jaclyn Orent. Oh, the pleasure is mine. Thank you for being a guest.
Yeah, it was a really cool introduction.
Thank you. That is courtesy of my brother Cole Johnson. He created that for me, and I appreciate him. So, thank you, Cole Johnson.
Yeah, what a gift.
So, what does it mean to be a cultural catalyst?
Yeah, so what it means to be a cultural catalyst is that you're actually someone wants to change the culture itself. And what does culture mean, right? What does it mean when we're saying we're wanting to be a cultural catalyst? And a cultural catalyst is someone who literally is modeling a new way of being, which shows up in their behaviors, their language, the way that they spend their time, what they do with their time, and really what's important to them. And when we actually have people who are doing things a little bit differently than the way that we've done it, but it's from a lens of being regenerative, i.e., it serves the whole, the way we act, the way we behave, the things that we build, what we do on this planet, and how we work together is actually whole serving and not just self serving. That's someone who's a cultural catalyst.
So when did you realize you were meant to do this work?
Yeah, it's funny. So I was actually just thinking before I got on this podcast right now was that the creation of Cultural Catalyst itself actually came out of a client's mouth last year. And I was working on finding out what is the ideal identity and outcome of the people that I am called to serve. And it literally came out of her mouth. And she said it was a cultural catalyst. And I'd never heard that term before. I'd heard the term cultural creative. And when I realized it was cultural catalyst, what I started doing was introducing myself to people as a cultural catalyst. And it was shocking because people would hear me say that and then they would say, me too. I'm also a cultural catalyst, but no one's given me that language until now. And what that did is as soon as I would meet people, I would realize that we're actually on the same team, that we're trying to create a new culture. And as soon as we had that shared language, we could actually work towards that with each other. And so that's what the cultural catalyst identity and outcome was meant to do. It was meant for people who are like, this is me, to raise their hand. And what that's called in the science of change, which is 60 years of research and intentional change theory from how does change happen from individuals to organizations to communities. And one of the things that's actually required is a social identity group, which, we have those in sports, right? My dad is a New York Giants fan. He's a Knicks fan. He's a Rangers fan. He's
I love your dad. I love your dad because
That's
those are all my teams. I'm a Brooklyn boy. I'm a New York kid, so those are my teams. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Like you identify this with the sports with your team, and but when I'm hearing you speak right now, you talk about cultural catalyst, and I'm like,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
me. Like that's me. That's what I'm doing here. That's what I'm building. The platform that I'm building. What I'm trying to do
amazing.
is to show people like, listen, like I'm I wasn't in media. I wasn't in podcast. But I was furloughed in 2020 from the pandemic, and I had this podcasting equipment that I paid $160 for, and I was like, I had been wanting to start a podcast, and I had just kept making excuses, and I just decided, you know what, let me stop being afraid and let me just do it. Like if I suck, I suck. I'm not gonna know if I don't try. So let's go. And I did it. And from there, it was just like I launched my production company. I launched the publishing company. I launched the internet radio station. It's like all these things I started creating just from me taking the risk of launching my podcast and
Yeah,
stepping out of my comfort zone and
yeah,
showing people that, hey, you can build and create your own platforms, right? Because
uh-huh.
everybody wants to be on TikTok, Instagram, all these other things, but none of those platforms you own. right? So I'm trying to show people how you can build your own platforms and not have to rely on say you get kicked off of Instagram on these where are people supposed to get you now, right? So my thing is to show people, hey, listen, build your own platforms. This
Yeah.
is where people can get you, and they don't necessarily have to rely on social media just for that.
And in some ways that there's a shared vision that you created. So it's whatever this vision of like really it's sovereignty. Like
Mhm.
I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to own my own audience. I'm going to create my own thing regardless of what it is that happens around me. I'm the one independent of that. And that would be a value of your social identity group specifically. So a social identity group is literally a group of people who have shared values, shared purpose, shared interests. And primarily we see that in like religion or like sports teams, right? Like you automatically bonded with my dad over the fact that you guys have the same teams. And that same thing is true for cultural catalysts, right? Is if we're cultural catalysts, what happens and what's happening right now is that all these leaders are siloed in different industries. Literally, we have people in finance and law, we have people in church services, we have people in pizza, right? And all these leaders are doing something different in all these different industries, and they've proven themselves to be capable. But the problem is for us to actually redesign the culture that we want to create and actually create a new culture, not just in organizations, but in the greater society as a whole. The science actually tells us we need to do it in relationships with each other.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we get depleted and burn out. And so, up until now, there actually hasn't been a place for cultural catalysts to come together and actually fuel each other, to activate each other, to turn each other on, to resource share, to problem solve, and to have fun with each other. Because our relationships are really the fuel to help us sustain our change efforts. And when it comes to actually creating a new system, like literally a new societal, structure and culture, one of the things that Machiavelli said back in 1515 was that the systems that exist are designed to protect themselves. And so it just shows you that, even though we know things are changing right now, and Ray Dalio literally says where we are in the changing world order right now, we're in transition. We're in transition from where we've been to where we're going, and there's a lot of change. And to be able to create something new is going to be inherently challenging just because the systems are designed to protect themselves. So being around the right people, so that people who share the vision of creating a new culture, who share similar levels of competence and capacity, and even similar levels of energy, right,
Yeah.
is actually neurologically and physiologically essential in order to actually make the change efforts last.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. Just the relationships I've been able to build, right, with people who create podcasts, who create content, whatever it is. There's like-minded people. There are people that I can go and I can bounce ideas off and to go speak to, or they might be a level ahead of me, and now that's someone I can go and have. They can mentor me. They can give me advice, and that's what I do similarly with people who come and ask me about podcasting. Like I've been at it 6 years now, and so now the to help other people who want to get into podcasts, I'll tell them like I'll show them how to avoid the pitfalls that I went through. Like everything in podcasting, I had to go and learn myself. I didn't know what an RSS feed. I didn't know anything about descriptions, episode, all that. I went and I immersed myself and wanted to learn, and so now I have all this knowledge. And when someone I know asks me a question, I'm more than love. I would love to help my friends or anyone who's interested in podcasting, help them launch a podcast because I love it so much. And if you feel like you have a story to share, why would I want to be the one not to help you get that story out? So you said this wasn't built from research alone. What was your personal transformation like?
Yeah, so about a decade ago, I got fired from a dream corporate job, like good salary, center of Austin, Max, Whole Foods, like catered lunch. I was actually interested in the product that I was serving and selling. And right before I got fired, I realized I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to do something that was actually genuinely of service. And one of the things that I had realized when I was working in corporate was that I was having some challenges with my health, actually. And so I was starting to look into health coaching, and I thought I had another quarter ahead of me before leaving, but I actually literally got fired within 3 days from then. And it was shocking and surprising and startling. And all the things, so much so that it literally opened me up to the maybe I should, think about what it is that I want to do next and find out what I'm actually interested in and see what I like to spend my time doing. Because I'd felt that, I'd done what my parents had modeled to me or communicated to me, but I hadn't really figured out what I wanted. And so I waited to tell them, and in waiting to tell them, I went down this health journey, basically, that ultimately culminated in me fasting on water for 36 days.
Fasting on water for 36 days?
Yes.
Wow. How was that effect on you? How did those 36 days affect you?
Well, it's been a decade since then, and now I am devoted to the service of humanity.
Well,
And beforehand, I was devoted to myself and how much money I could make.
I guess that has had really amazing effect. Yes, also. So
Yeah.
what were some of the biggest internal shifts you had to make?
Yeah, I mean, so some of the biggest internal shifts that I had to make, like I kind of break down my story into like three parts from where I am right now,
Yeah.
and there were really three sections of it. First, I had to learn, how to master myself, which ultimately culminated into the letting go of my mind, learning how to let go of the mind on demand, and learning how to reprogram from a higher level of awareness. So there's a base level skill set of mindfulness and internal maneuverability that has helped me learn how to unlock the extraordinary, actually, and actually get to do that for other people. So that was step two of the process. I learned how to unlock the extraordinary within myself. And then I learned how to unlock the extraordinary within other people. And in the unlocking of the other people, I found that working with leaders, specifically people like founders, key decision makers, and I'm talking whoever the final say goes to. So not even a COO, like the CEO, the founder, the equity owner. That's the person with the ultimate decision. Changing that person's consciousness and using the tools that I have gained over the last decade to really integrate what I had happen during the fast and actually ground it into my body and actually have it change me and the way that I show up and my values and my orientation and what's important to me literally has helped me unlock leaders in a way that was way beyond anything that I ever could have imagined. Like earth shattering, like almost confusion, like, wow, I could never have imagined something like that happening. And there's a specific example. I was taking time after I left a sales leadership position to actually pursue what it is that I'm doing now. And I worked with a multi-business founder in which his team was walking out on him. And I got there literally, imminently, as his team was walking out on him. And I helped facilitate a breakthrough for him that helped him go from what was causing that situation to happen to having him see a reality where he was actualizing himself, literally. And then finding out within 6 months from then, he literally met his fiance, which he wasn't even in a relationship with at that time when I met him specifically. He was actually able to retain his people. He was able to attract higher level talent. He dropped 30 pounds, literally. He's regained his sexual vigor and his creativity again. The thing that makes a man alive, that's part of him literally returned. And he was actually able to listen to his team and have capacity to actually hear them in a way that actually improved his leadership and his bottom line. And when I saw that that could be the result of the butterfly effect.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the literal showing in time is like when one butterfly flaps its wings, it affects the weather 8,000 miles away, that type of effect. I realized that the way that we create systemic change is actually through consciousness itself.
Mm-hmm.
Which actually validated the research of Dr. David Hawkins in his book, Power versus Force, The Hidden Determinants of Human Behavior. He has already mapped that out and used examples like Gandhi and MLK and Winston Churchill, right? And why their leadership was able to prevail in times where the circumstances didn't look good. like when Hitler had the strongest army in the world. Like, why is it that, we were still able to win? And when you actually look at what the research says, is that their calibratable level of consciousness, which in Churchill was around 500, which is associated with love, that was able to win in circumstances where Hitler was at like 175 and it was associated with shame. And that makes sense, that love prevails over shame, of course. But when it affects the system at large, and we're in a society right now where we are seeing that in real time, that what's been built before is no longer working. It's literally putting our species at the risk of extinction right now because we are not able to work together. That the way that we're developing our leaders and the way that we're creating change needs to change.
Sorry about that. Oh, sorry. I forgot to. Oh, sorry. Okay, we're good. Sorry about that. Forgot to cut it off. Okay, there we go. Airplane. Sorry. But yeah, you was going so good too, man. So why do most people struggle to truly change, right? Why is it a struggle for us to really change? And I've learned this throughout the years as well, but yeah.
That's the question. Yeah. So what is it? Why do people struggle to change? So first of all, I love the name of your podcast. I knew we would have a good conversation because this is like the deepest area of my mastery. It's like how to change your mind. Okay.
Yeah.
And I know because I've had to do it and I help other people do it and I help leaders do it and I see full systems change. That's literally what we're doing in the work that I'm doing. And so, I'm honored to have a conversation with you about this because I think I have a different perspective than a lot of people, and a lot of people stop at mindset work. You know, what I see after being, and after basically it's been a decade since the fast, okay? After 10 years from that, and coming back into reality, right? I'm here right now and having a conversation with you, and I'm here, like in this reality. I'm not in other realities, right? So I had to actually go through a process in which I had to take what I experienced in the fast and afterwards and actually integrate that into my body. And one of the things that I miss, and people often miss with the mindset work, is that they think that changing the mind will change the mind. And that's just not true. Okay? The mind is an expression of what is being held in the body. And there's also things in the mind that are expressing in the body. So when it comes to changing the mind, we have to be able to hold two sides. Okay? It's called the dialectic. It stands for, basically, we're able to sit with this and this. So when I talk about the dialectic, I'm always going to use the word and. Because the way that our brain is literally structured is that we can only see things in opposites.
Okay.
Part of the reason we're having trouble as a species right now, because we're blaming each other, we're getting mad at each other, and then we're actually interconnected. But the limitations of our brain is that we can't see our interconnectivity. We think the person's an opposite, but in reality, they're actually part of us.
Okay.
So, what'd you say?
I said okay.
So now that we acknowledge that the brain functions is in yes ands, when it comes to changing the mind is really just a part of the puzzle of actually changing behavior. And it's often where I see people get derailed, specifically. And one of the reasons that it gets derailed is because the mind is a piece of how we let go of the mind. And so I'm going to refer to a technique in this specific circumstance. And I actually learned this from Dr. David Hawkins. Dr. David Hawkins was a psychiatrist and a physician. He literally had you're actually from New York. You may have actually heard of him because of his practice specifically. Yeah, he ran the biggest psychiatric ward in New York, actually. So much so that they had to keep expanding it and getting more beds. He didn't write the book that I'm going to talk about until after he left that work specifically. So he started doing spiritual research, so bringing scientific rigor to consciousness, literally spirituality, after he left his work in intensive inpatient care specifically. And what he talks about and what he creates is the scale of consciousness. So it's actually a calibratable scale, a logarithmic scale that goes from 0 to 1,000 that actually calibrates the difference between death and enlightenment. Okay, all of this is measured through kinesiology and the body, in telling what makes the body go strong and gives it life, and what makes the body go weak and what doesn't give it life. Basically, it takes life. And they did this with scientific rigor, with double blinds, people who weren't interested in the outcomes of the information and that type of thing. So there's more information about that in the book. But he released a later book called Surrender, The Mechanism of Letting Go. And that book is literally the how-to manual of how to transcend the levels of consciousness. And why are we talking about the levels of consciousness? Because every level of consciousness has calibrated and associated thoughts with it. So everyone's like, we got to change the mind, right? But in reality, your mind is an expression of consciousness, certain calibratable, measurable attractor fields, okay? So I'll give an example. When someone's in shame or insecurity, they'll say certain things. You can tell in what they're saying in the sense that they feel insecure. That is an expression of consciousness, and behavior is a result of consciousness.
Okay. So you talk about a culture as an invisible system. Can you break that down?
A coach is an invisible system?
No, a culture. About culture as an invisible system.
Yeah, so culture as an invisible system is made up of shared norms, behavior, systems, way of being in relationship to others in the society, literally. That's what makes up culture, is the people themselves specifically. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. So how do relationships actually shape your culture?
Yeah. So one of the things that actually shapes relationships, that shape culture, is something called resonance. Okay, so resonance is a term that Richard Boyatzis, who spent the last 60 years studying how does change happen at a cultural level. One of the things he talks about is something called resonant leadership within a social identity group, right? That's actually what creates the change through all levels of the system. And resonant relationships, resonant leadership is made up of 3 pillars: shared vision, shared compassion, which includes competence and capacity, and shared energy. And so the energy that we are sharing with others is literally calibratable. We can tell if the energy that you are emitting is adding to life or detracting from life. And whether your behaviors, the way that you act, the things that you say, the way that you contribute to society is actually adding and giving to life or taking away from life. So that actually tells us that the way that we create a new culture is actually an inside job, individually, right? Because the system starts at individual, then goes to a dyad, then goes to a team, then organization, community, country, global processes. So the key to our cultural revolution truly is a inner revolution.
So what is emotional contagion and why does it matter?
Yeah, so emotional contagion, think when we talk vibe, people are like, I like their vibes, I'm going to hang out with them. Or I don't like their vibe, I'm not going to hang out with them. That's emotional contagion, okay? And you can intuitively know, what feels good and what doesn't. And so the way that new cultural norms literally get passed across the network is through energy, which makes sense. Because if you think about a social network, there's a network, a literal electric network underneath that communicates with itself so that I can communicate with you here and I can be here, right? Yeah. So that is actually what a network is. And so we get to share new ideas right now. I get to share my energy with you. I get to share my vision with you. And that in itself can create new realities for you. It can open up new ways of looking at things, new ways of operating. I'll I had an experience in family therapy last week where my parents are like, why don't you answer me? And I was like, I will answer you when I'm ready to answer you. And they're like, taking that disrespectively, but in reality, what I was doing was protecting my time and making it so when I respond to them, I respond instead of react.
Yeah.
And my sister gets off the call and she was like, oh my God, I've been reacting to all these people. Like, I get to choose when I respond to people. And I was like, yes, you can respond when you want to respond. And in doing so, my dad is literally acting differently. He took away a way that I was behaving, and it literally just changed his behavior.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Like, people sometimes, 'cause it makes sense for you to respond at your time, right? Because sometimes when we just react, the reaction just doesn't come out the right way. So it is important for you to take your time and respond when you're ready, and you've let it sink in, and because then sometimes when we do react, it doesn't come out the nicest way.
No,
So
no.
it is important for you to sit back and, like, I'm gonna respond when I'm ready and when I feel that it's gonna be proper enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how does your cultural catalyst system create real change?
Yeah, so the way that our cultural catalyst system actually creates real change is by bringing together leaders who are in a variety of different industries together to actually catalyze each other. So, what does that actually mean? We're actually bringing them together to be in relationship with each other, in which they're not usually in relationship with each other. Right now, the network is literally fragmented. So, I'll give you an example. I got off the phone with a woman with a community of 1.3 million people in 113 countries.
Wow.
And when I told her what I was working on, she was like, oh, I was wondering when someone was going to fix this. Because right now there's all these people in separate silos who want to do something about what's going on right now, but it's impossible to do it alone.
Hmm.
They have to do it around other people because it actually gives the physiological and neurological fuel to be able to sustain their change efforts. So what we're actually bringing them together to do is, you know, there's an energy that I imagine that's coming out of it specifically. There's going to be a group field, and it's going to be full of problem solving and collaborating and resource sharing and creative thinking and coming up with a new collective vision for what do we want our culture to look like? You know, what is it that's important to us? You know, how do we want things to affect each other? How do we want people to be? How do we want people to relate to each other? How do we want to coexist with the planet?
Yeah.
And actually doing something about it.
Yeah. Absolutely. You've integrated science into your work, right? How does that help people transform faster? Because
Yeah.
because you've kind of you've mixed science and that's why, and I, from this conversation, I could also see that you're also a very spiritual person and everything. So how do you mix all this? How did you get to, like, mix all this in?
Yeah. So first of all, the foundation of this work is based off of consciousness because that's what I had to learn first before the logical brain can come back online, literally. And so this past year, actually, after I had that experience with that founder, I started only working with leaders. This was actually in the last couple of years ago, and I was wanting to basically do what Hawkins had done for me, which he created a bridge. He created a bridge between consciousness and science in a way that I'd never done before. And he took someone who would never have considered that and actually made me open to it. And I wanted to do that with my work. So I applied to grad school, specifically what's called Minerva University, what's rated the most innovative university in the world, with a really specific thesis in actually connecting the work of Dr. David Hawkins to systemic change. And in getting in and seeking research partners, I got to meet Richard Boyatzis, the guy who wrote The Science of Change, how change happens from the individual to the team, to the team, to the organization, to the community. And I got to meet Dr. Benjamin Hardy, actually. So who wrote Who Not How and 10x is easier than 2x and The Gain and the Gap, who paired with Dan Sullivan. And both of them read my work. They read my thesis, they read my results, they read what I was asking for, and they both gave me feedback, which literally opened up a new pathway that was like, I think it was just made for me. So Boyatzis basically said that I was correct in my thesis, and he gave a phrase for it, which he called an intentional thing, his intentional change theory, the emergent field. And then Ben read my stuff and he was like, I love the nonlinear paradigm. I'll do whatever I need to help you. Don't read any of my other work besides The Science of Scaling. And I am aware enough to listen to what reality tells me. And reality also told me that Richard had actually already done the research. When Boyatzis was like, I got it, and I asked to get on the phone with him, he actually said no, because he wanted me to read his magnus opus first. And I remember being shocked because I didn't realize someone had created this already. And it took me a couple days and meeting Ben, actually, and then giving the book that he gave me to my business partner and having her run me through Ben's scaling science to realize that I actually didn't need to go to grad school, that I didn't need to spend $50,000, that I didn't need to go have someone else's system actually help me go do it. It actually already existed.
Oh man. Oh, because I know from podcasting and what it's been able, when I have some great conversations, right? The energy that just flows in the conversation, right? What role does energy and alignment play in leadership? Because for me, when I'm having these conversations, the energy is just amazing. Like when you're just having those free flowing conversations where where my guest is just dropping some great gems, like you're dropping today. It's like that energy is just that keeps me wired for the whole day. Like one of those conversations.
Totally. What's the question?
What role does energy and alignment play in leadership?
Yeah, so what energy actually does is that's that emotional contagion. And the emotional contagion is actually calibratable. So, and what I mean by that is it's measurable. So is it positive or is it negative? They're literally called PEA, NEA. Okay, then they do totally different things to the body and to the brain. And when we engage with certain people, we get energy from them. It opens our minds. We start thinking about things in a new way. It opens up new neural pathways. And sometimes if we really admire the person, our mirror neurons will go off and we'll literally want to be like that person.
Yeah. Absolutely. So what separates leaders who can create change from those who don't? Like what is it that they're doing that's separating them from the others?
Yeah, so the main thing that's separating leaders who are effective and are not is actually integrity. And I'm not talking integrity in terms of the behavior, okay? I'm talking integrity in terms of one's wholeness. One's inner wholeness and self-acceptance of oneself literally creates a positive emotional attractor field. And in being in integrity with oneself, true self, one's inner self, what happens is that you naturally give to life. When you are not in integrity with yourself, it does the opposite.
It's no, because even last year, I made it a conscious decision. Like January of last year, I made a conscious decision to just improve my relationship with God and everything, and just and everything in general. And since then, I had surgery as well as January of last year, and since then I'm down 140 pounds. And with that with me improving that relationship, things have really in this past year, like things have just been amazing. Like I just yesterday I just put in my 2-week notice at my job because I got an opportunity that came up that it's a big step for me as far as career wise, but also in what I'm doing in content creation and all that, because it requires a move, but it's going to put me in a place where I can build on these relationships that I want to build and help me build the the podcast and the production company and everything else that I'm doing. So just this with me making that shift where it was a conscious shift of me that I wanted to improve this relationship. By me doing that, things just have been to just kind of realign and in the positive way and fall into place and opportunities arise for me to be like, okay, imagine had I did this shift earlier, how things would, but things happen for a reason.
And we can still be disappointed that it didn't happen earlier.
So how can someone listening start shifting their environment and culture today?
I think the best thing that I have to offer that is actually a tool that actually creates long-term lasting change if someone is willing to do the work. And the willingness really comes from a vision of who one wants to become. So the first step in change science is actually to connect with who you want to be and what values you want to have and what's your purpose and what kind of impact you're here to make. And even legacy. What is it that you want to leave behind? And I personally find looking at legacy to be particularly humbling because it reminds us of our immortality, or rather our mortality.
Yeah.
And when we get reminded of the finite amount of time that we have in this vehicle in this incarnation, it helps put things in perspective as to how we actually use our time and what we invest our time in and whom we spend our time with.
Yeah. What does stepping into your next iteration really look like?
So stepping into one's next iteration does consist of a visioning process. That is, again, the first step of a change process. And that can happen before or after a tipping point. So what is a tipping point? A tipping point is literally either an external event, like someone dying, or a crisis in our life that either we do or happens to us that literally gets us to change and starts a new life cycle. And sometimes these come when they come and we can't predict them. And then sometimes we can actually initiate them ourselves. And so when it comes to your next chapter, we have the choice on whether or not we want to consciously choose to participate in that transformation, or we want to consciously choose to resist it, or not admit that we're resisting it. That's also an option. Or never stop resisting it. That's another option. Which actually puts us in a position of power when we actually accept that, wait a second, I can actually do something about this right now. And that in itself is a shift in consciousness. It gets you into this mentality of, I can do it. When we are in integrity and in I can, it's just a matter of whatever it is that we want to actually pursue. But there has to be a reason deep enough to do it. Otherwise, the way that the body and the mind and the nervous system and our neurology is structured is that it is designed to keep us safe. Yeah. And so change can also, depending on how you grew up and what the culture was and how you were raised, change can be really hard, or it's just part of life, right? Some people are like, woohoo, adventure time when change is happening. And then other people feel like they're losing control, and that's a lot of stress, right? Neither of these things are wrong. And so when it comes to actually changing, we actually get to decide and use our will. That is the thing that we've been given as a human being to decide what it is we want to do. And willingness is actually the requirement for change.
Yeah. You got to be willing to change. You have to be willing to change.
Yeah.
So what's one belief people need to let go to grow?
The fear of dying. Because what happens when we don't talk about it, or we pretend that it's not going to happen, or we resist the possibility, or we won't even accept that as a possibility, or won't even we won't even look at it. We'll just completely deny it as a reality. That's also an option. What happens is it creates this deep-seated fear of this, that's unique to everybody. But it's just fear. It's fear. And that's actually what's running the show. And when there's fear behind living, what it does is it creates purposelessness, actually. And it creates a life where we're avoiding experiencing life, or we're taking ridiculous risks, or just won't accept that we're going to die. And when we don't accept that we're going to die, then we don't actually live. It's really that simple.
And that kind of played into the role of me taking this position that I just took, because it was an opportunity for me, and it was just something I just couldn't let it pass. Like, it was an opportunity that, hey, this is happening now for a reason, right? Because you're doing all the things you're doing, and this gives you an opportunity to be in somewhere where you can start connecting with the people that I need to connect with to help me build what I'm doing. So it was like a no-brainer. Like, things happen for a reason. The transformation and everything that I started last year, it has led to what's going to happen, what's transpiring now, and everything that's falling into place now. So had I not made that shift and not consciously work on myself, like just working on becoming the better version of myself, and that's constant work. That's every day that I'm improving. That's every day me wanting to build something to help others, and so with this happening, it's like, okay, it just kind of reaffirms everything I've been doing, like all the work that I've been putting into, because now everything's like just falling into place. And had I not challenged myself and faced the fear, right? Not because I could have easily been like, no, I'm comfortable where I'm at. I don't want to make this move. It's a big move. No, I'm like, no, it's a big move, and yes, it's scary, but if I don't do it and I don't attempt it, how do I know? Like, how do I know if I'm gonna be successful at it or not? So it was like, I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna do it. And the fact that my wife has been very supportive, and she's like, listen, this is a big step towards us, helping us down the line to really get to enjoy the life we truly want to live. So yeah, like it was a no-brainer for me.
Will you give yourself permission to release resisting to the positive?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And let yourself feel the joy?
Oh, I'm so excited. Like, I'm so excited, right? Because it's first of all, I go back home. I'm going back home, going back to New York, and so, but it's just I'm looking at all the opportunities, all the like. There's people that I want to connect with and interview in New York City. So being able to be in the city and connect with these people and yes, I love the virtual aspect, but now there's a part of it where now there's people in the city where I can interview them face to face. Right now it's giving me an opportunity to really take the show in a different direction, and so I'm just excited. Bless you. So what impact do you want your work to have long term?
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about that the other day because I've been a student of Ray Dalio for 5 years, and Ray was and is the founder of Bridgewater Associates, one of the largest hedge funds in the world. It didn't start that way. Okay, it started in his he's middle class, and now he's one of the wealthiest people in the world. And I've been studying his work through Principles of Life and Work, and his organization is also often compared to like the Navy SEALs of the intellect. Okay. And I've been learning from Ray. And one of the things that Ray talks about in another one of his books is called The Changing World Order, which basically what's happened now has happened before. And it's been traced across lots of different empires and the rise and fall of empires and why countries go broke. And one of the things I was thinking about that what Ray is talking about, what's going on right now, and there's certain indicators of that are consistent across the rise and fall of empires. And there are a lot of them that are happening right now in the United States. So like civil unrest, natural disasters, like I'm in Colorado right now, we're totally in a drought right now. There's a huge gap between the rich and the poor specifically. We're majorly in debt and printing money, and they're devaluing the dollars specifically. And the value of our dollar has literally gone down because of that specifically. And these are all indicators of literally the rise and a fall of a nation. And where we are at in what's called I think it's a 5-stage debt cycle, 5 or 6-stage debt cycle, is transition. So the United States is literally in a transition from being the world power to not being a world power anymore. And when we went to war with Iran, Ray was like, now we just moved into step 6 of the debt cycle, actually. So like what that points to is the next 20 years are all about going to be transition from where we are to where we're going. And it's not going to be comfortable, and it's not going to necessarily be easy in certain circumstances. We're going to need to rebuild as a nation. And the way that we do things and the way that we treat each other and the way that we build businesses and how they function and what we devote and what our values are literally going to need to change so that we can survive, truly. And the way that we've been doing things has worked great until now. And I would say probably till the 90s where things were good, from what I can tell based off the economic data. But so what that means right now is that we're in a situation where we need the people who are cultural catalysts to be like, I am ready to put my hand up. I'm ready to do something about it. I have the capacity. I have the capability. I have the team. I have the resources. I have the energy, and I have the attention to devote to leaving the culture differently when I die. Yeah. And so where I see this work going, it's funny, if I look 20 years out and then add another 50 years, I'm going to be in my 80s by the time basically the US comes back into its prosperity, where things are flourishing again, which means I actually get to see the harvest of my work. But at the same time, we've got some challenges ahead of us, and it's up to us to do something about it. And that's what we're doing with the Cultural Catalyst Network.
Absolutely. So now we've come to the part of the show where you're gonna get the solo screen and the spotlight, where you're gonna let people know where they can connect with you. Yeah, totally. My last question is, if someone feels stuck between who they've been and who they're becoming, what would you tell them?
Do something that scares you. It doesn't even have to be substantial. It just needs to be a little something. It could be jumping off. Like, I was thinking about my camp last night. There was this like 20-foot tower that went over the lake, right? And some people had a lot of trouble with jumping off that thing. At some point, you just have to rip off the Band-Aid and do it, right? And then you jump off the thing, and then you're like, oh, that wasn't as bad as it seemed. And so the way that we actually get courage to do hard things is by doing lots of little things to prove to ourselves we can do it. And that's called efficacy. So an example of that is I'm going to do something hard that I've never done before, but at some point, I'm going to get it. And then I'm going to prove to myself that I can do it. And so it's just a matter of picking something that you have the willingness to get uncomfortable with and to learn and expand and grow. And that is how you can start to move from what's a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And you can actually start creating new neural pathways and new behaviors.
Awesome. Well, now we've come to the show where you get to plug away, let everybody know where to find you, everything.
Great. Well, thank you so much for listening. If you felt the call and you are a cultural catalyst, we have made something just for you. You have the ability to participate in a transformational experience that will take you from who you are today into what it is that is calling you next. And you can sign up for that at culturalcontribution.com. culturalcontribution.com. And if you're wanting to learn more about us, follow us on socials, learn more about the science, and so on and so forth, you can actually check out our website, which is culturalcatalysts.net.
Awesome. Thank you for being such a great guest. I appreciate your time. But don't leave just yet. Let me just close out the show, which I a little bit off the air. But thank you so much. This has been great. Awesome. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. You've been attuned and listening and engaging, and it felt good.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, everybody. Another great episode is in the books. I greatly appreciate Jaclyn for coming through and sharing. I want to thank Jaclyn for coming on and dropping some powerful insight on transformation and leadership. If you got any value from this episode, make sure you subscribe, leave a review, share this with someone who's ready to level up. And please don't forget to check out everything we're building at Real Wise Global Media. And as always, you know how your boy Wise does it. Peace out.